I was on a tour in Alaska with some members of my extended family. It's a beautiful trip. Everything was going well. And then we were staying overnight in this inn. So I decided to go off walking in the morning. And I was going through this tree-lined area. And I kept seeing these signs. Beware of the bears and the moose. So because I was by myself, I decided this was not a good thing to be doing. So I went back, and later we had lunch, and my first cousin Liz said, I went walking into the small town. It was very safe, so would you like to go with me? Oh, sure. So we're walking along, and all of a sudden I look up, and there's this big black bear. I thought, this is not a game park, this is not a zoo, this is us out there with this black bear. So she said, should we keep going? Bad idea. I said, I remember some of the instructions I've read along the way. Back away, look friendly, let it keep eating, which it did. And we went back and told our story, and we became the heroic figures in the tour because we had faced the black bear and survived. Another time I was in the first week when school was opening in Sarn Hall, which is right outside the door of the Basilica. And I kept my door open because I wanted to interact with the students and the families. That night I went to sleep, and about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I felt like there was a butterfly in my room. It turned out it was really a bat. So we have these high ceilings. The question is, what do you do with a bat at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning? I'm not going to tell you what I did, but we became safe at the end of the evening. We now have a methodology for that among the dorms, which happens occasionally. But for me, there was fear, an innate fear about a bat in my bedroom. Creepy crawly things can do that to us. Spiders, cockroaches, rats, sometimes mice, raccoons. We could go through a list. If you have nightmares at night, what of those kind of things do you think about? They're all part of the creation that we enjoy together, but they can scare us. Sometimes for legitimate reasons, sometimes just because our mind goes amok. There's other kinds of fears that we have, phobias we call them. I've spent much of my adult life flying in airplanes, and I sat next to this young woman one time, and she says, it's my first flight, and I'm afraid. And I felt like I could tell her about how much more dangerous it is to drive in a car than it is to fly in an airplane, and how many years it's been since a scheduled airline had an accident, and so on. I just said, it's going to be okay. High places people fear, public spaces. People fear being out in the open water. Sometimes they say the greatest fear of all is public speaking, like being up here. Whatever it is that grabs your attention, we are people capable of fear about all kinds of things, sometimes unnecessarily so. There are people who fear almost everything, think the world's out to get them, and they are suffering from some kind of mental illness. But there are legitimate fears, and now we face one together, the coronavirus. The coronavirus is unusual. It's not like mumps or measles, when you can see when people have it. We'd have no idea who has it. And they could have it and not be sick, or have no manifestations of it, and yet give it to someone else. And so it makes us suspicious. So we wear masks, or we distance ourselves, or whatever. So many of the human things we like to do automatically, like hug each other and kiss and shake hands and be in each other's company, are put off for a while. So we can be fearful. The human desire to be together in groups, to share our life with one another, can be put on hold. So we can be fearful. In the first reading from Jeremiah, who was a very stern prophet, kept warning Israel about its sinfulness and the dire circumstances that were going to happen. The people went out to get him, and he knew it. And so he prayed to God to be protected. The book of Daniel in the Jewish scriptures, and the book of Revelation in the Christian scriptures are so-called apocalyptic writings. They're in code, and they're intended to give comfort to those who are being persecuted. So if the persecutor picked the book up, they wouldn't be able to figure out what the message was. Only those that had the key. It's interesting if you think about Jesus in his own ministry. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he was fearful because death was imminent. On the cross, he wanted this to pass if possible, but rather the Father's will be done. Jesus was fearful, as all of us can be some of the time. The great thing we can say as Christian believers, however, is even though there are legitimate human fears, we could be held up, our house could be burglarized, whatever, we could be in the wrong situation at the wrong time, we could get sick, and we know all of us will eventually die. The great human fears in religious terms are the sin in our life is unforgivable, and we will die, and that will be the end. No more life. But as Christian believers, we proclaim that Jesus' life, ministry, death, and resurrection have created a new order, the order of the kingdom of God, and that there is no such thing as an unforgivable sin. There's no lifestyle that can not lead to conversion. Jesus is available to us through the ministry of the church. And all of us can take delight in the recognition that we too can someday share in the glory of the Lord's resurrection. There's nothing wrong with fearing. But Jesus says in the gospel, fear no one. Do not be afraid. Because ultimately, it's all in God's hands. We know the outcome of the story. It's a good one for those of us who believe and do God's will. So let us draw comfort in the face of the coronavirus or any other fear that might preoccupy us. Do not be afraid. It's all in God's hands.